All right. Well, welcome back to episode number 8. We're 8 in. Been thinking about a line that you used in our last session where we were talking about offshoring,
Mm-hmm.
and it really stood out to me because it was like it's not a fix, it's a Bandaid,
Yeah.
and that is has been sticking with me primarily because as you and I have talked a lot about recently is just from the client lens perspective, like how do we capture more intelligence for the client, right? And when we are thinking about using AI and all the work we've been doing in the lab, the WIS labs has been running pretty hot. Um, how do we do everything for the user so that the client experience can exponentially be better?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the things that we want to make sure we're thinking about as we build in this layer of intelligence into our workflows? And so the reason I wanted to start with this whole concept is for people to really start thinking about how is an organization building intelligence? Because that's a question that we want to have people, even in their own, organization, but even as they evaluate all of the people that they're partnering with and their vendors, right? So maybe we just start with when you said it's a Band-Aid, not a fix, maybe just give some context to like how did offshoring even start?
Yeah, I get worried when you say something you said because I'm like, man, I don't. So, my opinion on how it starts is there were two problems coming in, right? There's a lack of accounting personnel, and there's a lack of wealthy accounting firm partners. And so the reality is, like, you look at every other business and you're like, how are they making more money? They're making money by buying cheaper product in China. Like they're squeezing dollars down in the margin so that they can enjoy a better life. So it was like an easy way to say, I could expand my margins if I hire overseas and pay $8 an hour to these people versus
Mhm.
hiring US individuals and pay market rate. So I think that those two pressures, I wouldn't say which one I think was more prevalent in the minds of the people that went for it, but it's a reason. I think it was the reason primarily was cost savings and
Interesting.
increased
So
profits.
now I'm going to go into our economic sort of theoretical backgrounds here. So we have Adam Smith, right?
Yep.
Wealth of Nations, and he talked about comparative advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people, it'd be like, well, of course, that's economics 101, and where you should be localizing any cost to an area that could do something just as good as you could, if not better, and for a lower price. That's actually a good thing. So
Right.
to all of those Adam Smith proteges out there, why is that not? Why will that not work in today's and tomorrow's?
Yeah. If you're, in my opinion, again, right. If you're offshoring things that are completely valueless, I might side with Smith. But the biggest challenge that we're facing, or one of the challenges that we're facing right now, is the capturing of the data. What does it mean? How do we interpret it? And if you don't have the context to be able to do that, you're behind, right? So I think a lot of the people that did the offshoring, you lose all of the context of which they're not employees. They're not. Even if they are your employees, right? Just think about all of the differences between somebody that sits next to you, you converse with daily versus somebody that works on a completely different life and time schedule. Like, you don't have great ongoing relationships. Yes, you do speak occasionally, but you apparently, from my viewpoint, lose so much of the context of what you're giving to that other party.
Which is a great word, the context, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about in tomorrow's economy.
Mhm.
Context matters, right?
Context is what I believe to be one of the most important values right now in working with AI. And I
Yep.
think that the AIs are brilliant, and what they're able to derive or produce from what they derive is just incredible. But the biggest thing where I see it not producing the results the way that we want them is they're lacking context.
Right.
And so the question becomes, where does that context come from? And it comes from somebody or something that knows. And if you have outsourced or offshored all of that knowledge, I think it's a very difficult thing to be able to draw that context back in a meaningful way. Like the idea behind AI is that it has the ability to ingest gigantic sums of data. And if you're limited in the data, you're limiting the output of the AI.
That's great. And I think we can use an example this week with Apple, right? Where Tim Cook, who had a great run. I mean, honestly, I don't know how anybody could have filled Steve
Well, no one
Jobs'
could have,
shoes,
but
as well as he did. And it's interesting, just as to bring it in as part of the conversation. I think what they've been talking a lot about is like, yes, having China as the main place for all of the manufacturing absolutely works with the comparative advantage kind of concept,
Mhm.
right? That worked. But by doing so, there's unintended consequences. And now they're really trying to rethink,
Right.
okay, where do we go from here? And did we, by doing that, did we lose a lot of these things that you don't see as important because you're like economically, he did phenomenal.
Correct.
Like when you look at it from a pure financial, right? But the question you almost have to ask though is Apple still a 0 to 1 organization?
I think, go ahead, keep going. It's
Yeah. So when you think about Steve Jobs, they were a 0 to 1
Mhm.
organization, right? And the creation of groundbreaking products and how these things that were brought to market never existed.
Right.
So clearly 0 to 1 organization. And what you could say is maybe with that approach where it really became like how to drive the most of the financial engine, which was beautiful. The comparative advantage that was there financially, you wonder of the design of why did they lose the 0 to 1 in a way? And can you use that as a reference point to even think about accounting firms?
Yeah. Good question. Interesting question. So I think that it's really hard to develop something out of um, not a direct need. So I think a lot of what we've done with WIS Labs is because we were encountering it as the providers, the provision of the service. And we recognize like, man, this doesn't work. Again, we were convicted there was going to be something else. We didn't know exactly what it was, but we knew that there was a 0 to 1 for us. Had we not been doing those things, right? Had we not been on the ground actually performing the work, I think we would have looked at it through a more financial lens. And I think we would have looked at things and said, how do we rip costs out? Not how do we actually change these things or
There
play
you
a
go.
part in changing these things. And so what I think that Apple has lost, there's always a trade-off. There's no like, right. I mean, in an
Absolutely.
economy, there's a trade-off to everything. So when you lose the workmanship, the ability, the knowledge of those things, or uh, lost might be a strong word, but given up a lot of the understanding and control and nuance that makes it so special, there's a cost,
Mhm.
and we'll see what that cost ends up being. But
And I think sometimes, like, it goes back to what you said previously, just around, hey, look, organizations want to have financial success, and that's a
right,
wonderful thing, right? But sometimes you got to look at, are you really thinking long term with that? Because, yeah, everything has its runway,
sure,
okay? And I think what you said before, which I loved, was a runway on the accounting structure in and of itself. There is no 0 to 1
yeah,
because everyone just wants to continue to do what we've been doing,
right,
right? So, and that's why we even designed the Whistlas, because we've been fed up for 30 years, right? Let
yeah,
alone like so I want you to dig into a little bit there around what is it structurally that needs to be fixed. If you had one thing that you could go into and you're going to build a new accounting firm, what is the one thing that has been annoying you for as long as you've been in this
It's funny.
world?
Like you didn't feed me these questions. I have no idea what the hell they are. Uh, I remember going to a conference in Philadelphia in around 2003 and it was done by one of our partners. I'm sorry that I can't remember who it was. And I was introduced to Baker, and Baker's thesis was the death of the billable hour.
Right.
And it is the most frustrating part of the job because for a variety of reasons, it's the most deflating thing you could do to an accountant. And so the theory that I kind of worked through myself at that point was, if I was a pure pessimist, I could value my life right now.
Yep.
I was probably 24 years old. And if I took my hourly rate and presumed I was going to bill around 1,200 chargeable hours a year for the next 38 years, and I presumed there was going to be an interest, a CPI inflation, like I could tell you what I was worth today.
Mhm.
And that's a daunting
Defeating.
thing to kind of go through. And I left that conference, by the way, I was like, oh, we're killing the timesheet. It's ridiculous. But it's just always been the thing that we fall back to for lack of being more creative and more thoughtful. And it was presented in that meeting sort of like, pretend it didn't exist. How would you actually bill customers? And this is going back 20 years, more than 20 years now. And it was amazing that the room was totally they were like, well, I don't know. Like, how would we do
How
it?
would
He
you do it?
presented the
We're
idea
still
of
being asked that
generating
question
outcomes.
today.
We've gotten a little better.
Not us.
Right.
Not us, let's
But
say,
it's,
right?
it's
But
valuing the outcome.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, think about it like any other business. How do they do
Yeah.
these things? When they do even staff evaluations, they don't have time cards that they pull out and they say, well, you were productive 68% of the time, non-productive 20% of the time, on vacation. Like they have to understand the person. They have to look at the contributions that person has made, the changes they've made, and actually deeply understand to do a good job in it. Where we've always had how many hours they charged last year? How many this year? Oh, they must have done a great job.
Yeah. And look, and I think what you're talking about is an input problem, right?
Yeah.
That has become the focus. And as a result of the focus on the input, hence why offshoring becomes such a great solution.
Sure.
Because again, like we've been as an industry, I'm saying, we've been so focused on input.
Yeah.
And the measurement being input, and not so much around how do you measure output.
Right.
And how do you get to that point where you are designing your organization around output. And I think, again, that it's the stagnation has occurred because there has been this propensity to continue to try to be what we've always been. And thankfully, with this disruption, we're getting a chance to be able to not look like everyone else. Because I think the challenge we've always had as a organization that's been dominated by behemoths in our industry, it's hard to be totally different.
Oh my God. If you don't look like them, you don't belong here. Right. So we had to play the part uncomfortably for such a period of time that we were a pure CPA firm.
Yes.
And we couldn't, if we were masquerading as something else for a period of time, even though we knew how much different we were thinking and the things that we were doing. You were a CPA, you were an audit firm, you were tax, you were like, these were the things that were necessary to be there. We couldn't deviate far off, not only for clients, for talent.
Yeah.
Right. If you go to school for 4 years, that at least my college, like they beat you up. You're going to leave. You're going to be an auditor. If you don't do that, you've wasted your parents' money. That was from the professors' mouths where I was, because there's this path, there's this true, like tried and true way to become successful. And, again, if we deviated too far from that, we weren't going to.
You couldn't, right? Like you have to, and that's the reality, right? The reality is just like, if we go back, like using Apple as a perfect example, right? So you had IBM and you had all these companies back then where before Apple was Apple, I'm sure that anybody that was buying a computer or anyone that was bringing what are these strange machines into our organization, remember, like no one was getting fired for bringing IBM in.
Sure.
And it's no different, right? In our world, remember, like these poor CFOs already are, they're in the back of the office. They don't have, like, they're always under scrutiny, under scrutiny.
Sure.
So a lot of times it's like, I can't get fired if I'm bringing in a humongous firm. It has a reputation. It's not my problem, right?
It's a protected
but if you brought in
choice.
somebody that looks completely different, speaking different, that's an easy target.
Right.
So that's very difficult to do, and we get it.
Yeah.
Right. So and the reason now that we believe that there is a 0 to 1 issue coming is that you can actually design something that works better than what the older model produced. So in Apple's case, they had to design something that was better first
Right.
before you can come in and be like, hey, by the way, I'm going to like, yeah, like how they do it, we do it, but we just look different. Like that's not going to work.
Right.
So, and so we understand that, but I do think that what you said, just going back to the context, is a real important element now of building that better engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think about the things that we're actively solving for clients currently. So if I think about like just a handful of projects that I'm working on for clients right now, without having team members here that I could go say, how did you reconcile AR from third party last month? What was and for them walking me through and then me being as dumb as I am saying, just open it up, just show me what it is. And being able to understand that, you can come back and say, okay, I need to meet with IT. I need to get a meeting so that we could develop the first step at an agent that's going to help us with this reconciliation. If we don't have the ability to draw into that, think about how much more fragmented that process becomes. I reach out to the client, who's even your how does your AR process work? What is your, like, those are more difficult things when you don't have the context either internally here at the firm or even at that company.
That's great. And I think we have to also talk about that for a second too, because again, what we're really saying is that the more context you have, the greater intelligence that you're going to be able to produce.
Certainly. A lot of the shortcomings within AI that people get frustrated with, and they're like, oh, it's no different. It's not. It's because you haven't fed it the appropriate context or you haven't asked it the appropriate questions. So there is a period when you first start iterating with these tools that you're like, I've got to get clearer in my questions. Like I've asked a question and now I can understand sometimes staff people leave my office being like, the hell did he ask me to do? Right. So you become much more direct in what you're looking for. And then the secondary piece is when you get the result and it is what you've asked for, but not in the manner that you've asked for it or not, it's missing something. That's the context that you haven't fed to be able to create the output that you want. So there's an iteration to learning this tool along with all the others, but the context is, in my opinion, one of the lead examples of why it's underwhelming people.
Right. So in your role, and you work with a lot of CFOs, and that is what we're really trying to design everything here for is the user, and whether that's our own accountants or a company's accountants. So you're having conversations now, and CFOs are coming to you and they say, "Hey, Matt, I'm thinking of bringing in XYZ, and you're somebody I'm thinking of too. But help me. Why you?" And so what I would want you to think about is, what are the questions that you would even want the CFO asking about if that person was picking a partner as an accounting firm today? What are some of the questions you think he should be asking or she should be asking?
Who else have you done this for that looks like us that has faced these challenges? That's a great question to be asking. The other is, how does your process work? Where will my data be? Who will own it? What's the ultimate end state of this? So sort of like understanding the way it's going to flow, the way that the project is going to be managed. Who will I be interfacing with? Those are like really important questions. Are they the ones to solve it? I think at the outset, it's the data security that they're very worried about.
Yep.
So I've had, for the first time ever, actually, I was about to say in a long time, but this didn't exist before. I'm signing NDAs, and explicit right in the NDA is paragraphs about no information to be uploaded into an LLM, none of their client data. So there's awareness, certainly from the legal teams that are drafting these documents, but it should be on the mind of CFOs is the data security. And, again, that comes from experience of what are things that I can share locally in my environment? What are the things that I can open up? When can I bring in Claude from the web? When do I need to close it off, right? So asking the experience of people doing this is the most important thing, or one of the most important things. Who else they've done it for, what their process is. And then like if I was able to ask like one question is, what is the deliverable from this? Like, are you going to call me and say it's done? And now I just go back to, you call it SAP, HubSpot, sales, or is there a report, or like, what is the end state of this? Is this a phased project? So getting a real feel for what you're buying as the CFO is really important.
So if you found out in that line of questioning
Mhm.
and you're the CFO, and and you've want to know about outsourcing, like yeah, we offshore. Like, what would it be? What would you want to know of? And again, just to make it clear to all the users, like, we're not anti-offshoring or
No, no,
like
no.
we're just trying to bring some
Yeah,
intelligence, if
yeah.
you will,
I
using that
think
word. We want to be clear that we're not. It's just that we need to make sure that we are educating everyone around the reasons why you need to be thinking these things through.
right.
And so if somebody said, "Hey, they find out, hey, this most of the work's going to be done offshore." Why is that a problem?
It's so like anything else in your life, think about it. You'd want to know like who has my stuff over there? Like, what is your relationship with them? Do you own that firm? That's one
Mhm.
example where we own and they're our employees. There's another where it's a third party vendor relationship. Like, what does that look like? Like, to help me understand what, like, because they have turnover, they're people. You're hiring other people to work on my behalf. What is the data security between you? How do you know that they don't have issues internally? Like that, those are just immediate thoughts that enter my mind when I would encounter something where somebody was going to outsource any of my sensitive data.
Right. And what I think we want to get all of our audience to be thinking about is the day of being so much in the past, right? Of thinking, okay, this is the way things have always been done. You really should start challenging those things,
Right.
right? Number one. Number
Mhm.
two, I also believe that you really got to start thinking of accounting as intelligence.
Mhm.
And if you're partnering with an organization that is going to know so much about you, you want to know, how do they capture that?
Right.
Is that only in the mind of just the individuals? The individuals come and go,
Right.
right? How does that intelligence become more instrumental in a organizational way that it perpetuates across relationships?
This goes directly back to your earlier talk about tribal knowledge.
Right.
So tribal knowledge exists within the CPA firm on behalf of our clients, not only in the way that we carry out their tasks, right? The tribal knowledge of how do we get through this tax return, this projection, this audit, this the more important tribal knowledge is
Mm.
oh, those shares transferred when dad passed away and left them to a trust, and that trust is actually split between family
There
members,
you
two
go.
of which are in the company, two of which are not. So a lot of the pure context that leads to decisions that you would look back and go, why would they ever do that? And when you understand, you're like, oh, they had to do that. That wasn't an active choice. That was a result of right the hand that they were dealt or whatever it is. So the contextual knowledge with respect to the client relationship is the tribal knowledge that CPA firms have. That's the unique advantage. So if I'm to go into a brand new company, I don't know anything about them. I always tell them like, look, there's like a year I'm gonna ask the dumbest questions because I have no idea, and without
Well,
that
that's what I
context,
love
how do I
about you. You
help?
are so curious that
To a fault sometimes.
no, but again, like, which is going to be great for us as an organization, is we're going to actually be able to capture all of your intellectual
Yeah,
knowledge that you have, because you have.
it's been fun.
It's incredible how distributed it gets across so many different horizontal ways on on a person, on the organization, which is wonderful. It's what makes you. But now we're going to be able to capture that
Yeah.
so that it's across the team, it's
Right,
across the whole service team, so that everyone is at least aware
right,
of the things that you've been building and harnessing and storing in your own memory for years and years and years.
right. Well, we used to use this is the difference between software and
There you
intelligence,
go.
right? So we used XEM, client data, and so there was a period where I was trying to be religious about it. I'd think of something about a client and you remember the screen, client data,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd go in and be like, they sold the California property. Like, got it.
Got it.
Right. Like I put that in. That's good. I don't know that I can confidently say that anyone ever, any human being actually went to any piece of knowledge I ever entered in there. Right. I mean, that's probably true. It may make myself feel better. Two people have ever read them. Now creating the intelligence layer we have on behalf of each client, it's a query about Nexus in California, and
Yeah.
it's going to draw up all of that client information that we have
Well,
stored.
yeah, and what I'm real excited about is in our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about our intelligence layer that we've been building. I'm super pumped. But it's funny because just for people that have no idea what goes on in an accounting firm, right? It's just so
Everyone.
opaque. The ways in which we have stored information is this document manager
Oh, God, I
type
know.
thing, right? And you highly secure all those kinds of stuff. But oh my God, when I try to find my notes, because I like back in, let's say, 1998, I remember on a yellow pad, I would draw out like something really important and it would be in the permanent file.
Yep.
So put that in the permanent file. I go into that system. I can't find for the
Thousands
life
of
of me.
pages of permanent
Yeah,
file.
it takes me 2 hours to find what
Yep.
I'm trying to get. And, you have knowledge that sits in such a static
Yeah.
environment.
Well, that's again, painting the point of the difference between software and intelligence. Software in that sense existed in iChannel. I could go back, I could parse through thousands of pages. I'd use the search function. It stunk because it didn't really, wasn't able to draw out exactly what I needed, or I didn't, know the words to be exactly searching for. So that was wasted hours. Those were non-professional hours. That's the truth. Now, having the ability to search using all of the variety of tools that we're using, including the document scanning, that's intelligent, can respond in, sometimes 10 minutes, more often 2 minutes with the find. It's incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's a wrap. I think we
well,
can wrap it, but go ahead. You have something you want to add?
The only other thing that's been a theme for this week, and it's like shown up a couple times now. So I've been trying to be more mindful about where does the CFO and the accounting team feel like they're falling short, not only to themselves, but to the rest of the organization. So I've got 3 examples this week where it's primarily been the sales team. So we'll blame sales.
Interesting.
But sales is looking for more data. And so there's a variety of circumstances where they want data on prior contracts, so a variety of things. Let's not get into the particulars. But what ends up happening is they make a request to the accounting department. The accounting department needs to go offline to solve these things because they're mission critical. They're sales. They're like revenue items come first always. And so what that does is then delay further the close items. They work on this schedule. They create it. They generate it for a very important sales rep in California. They deliver it. And now the truth is, while that wasn't wasted time, like truly thinking about it, there's a lot of waste in there because that's a static report that was created one time that's going to change next month when there's a new sales order. And we've not created anything other than the tribal knowledge of how to generate that report. And so maybe they'll get good at generating that specific report, but next month they want to add in shipping or something else. And so it's examples, and there's more than one just this week of the accounting team feeling like they're letting everybody down because they're not producing it. And the self-serve models that were promised in like things like Salesforce and HubSpot, which are awesome tools, lack the ability to look through into the accounting data that they need to be able to pull out and produce the report. So the tools that we're developing on behalf of these companies right now are using a variety of MCP within our own context, drawing in HubSpot, drawing in NetSuite, and being able to create something that is somewhat of a self-serve model, and also hoping to quell a lot of this back and forth and shortcoming of finance so that they can get back to.
Totally. And think about it, it goes right into what we've been talking today. Context.
Right.
Okay. First of all, I think it's completely unfair that the accounting department is left out
Right.
of any strategic conversations, right? So they have no idea half the time what even initiative sales has gone off on and what they're actually doing in terms of some of these tactical ways that they're feeling like they can go to market with. And the accountant is sitting again somewhere, but then being asked to pull up this type of, there's no context. Right. So the same thing we're talking about with it, which is the issue if you're doing a lot of your work offshore and you're not really thinking about how to harness all of this, it's no different. Right. And so those questions that are being asked and those things that are pecking at the accounting department, no one's really designed tools to give them this type of insight. Right. But like when you think about like the front line, all the tools that continue to be available for salespeople, marketing people, all of those things, right? Constant innovation,
Sure.
right? But in our world, these smart tools just haven't existed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love how you, that's a great way to, and none of this is scripted, by the way. So these things just sort of happen organically.
You're going to hit me with a question soon, and I'm going to have nothing.
We'll just be able to edit it out. Anyways, great conversation. Looking forward to our next one.
Same here.
That's a wrap on This Week in Accounting AI. If you found this useful, make sure to follow us. On Spotify, smash that follow button on our show page. And on Apple Podcasts, tap the plus sign and leave us a quick rating while you're there. I'm Paul Peterson. See you next week.